You descend into a tunnel beneath the Owl Mountains in Poland. The walls are unfinished. The concrete stops suddenly. Rail lines disappear into darkness. Somewhere above you stands Książ Castle, once tied to one of the most ambitious underground projects Nazi Germany ever attempted. But there is no complete blueprint, no final master plan, no surviving document that fully explains what this place was meant to become. And this is not the only discovery World War II left behind. In Austria, divers pulled near-perfect counterfeit British banknotes from a cold mountain lake. In Hawaii, researchers found enormous Japanese submarine aircraft carriers deliberately sunk after the war. In Germany, uranium cubes from a failed nuclear experiment scattered into history. In China, the ruins of Unit 731 still raise questions not about whether horrors happened there, but how much evidence was destroyed before anyone could fully count them. World War II did not just leave battlefields, it left tunnels, wrecks, bunkers, missing artifacts, and unfinished stories. These are 10 World War II discoveries historians still can't fully explain. In the forests of Lower Silesia, beneath mountains that now belong to southwestern Poland, Nazi Germany carved tunnels into the earth. Not one tunnel, not one bunker. 7 major underground complexes, connected to a wartime landscape that also included Książ Castle. This was Project Riese. Built between 1943 and 1945, it used forced laborers, prisoners of war, and concentration camp prisoners. Riese was real. It was huge. It was built with coerced labor, and multiple underground complexes still survive. But here's the part that keeps historians returning. The works were never finished. The surviving evidence includes access tunnels, unfinished halls, rail traces, shafts, foundations, and altered spaces around Książ Castle. But the full master plan is missing. Historians generally interpret the mountain complexes as protected underground industrial space, while Książ Castle may have been connected to headquarters or elite administrative use. Claims about hidden wonder weapons, underground cities, or secret vaults are not supported by surviving records. And yet the mystery remains powerful because the ruins are real. The tunnels exist. The labor system is documented. The concrete is still there. But the final purpose remains uncertain. The Nazis built 7 underground complexes here, but never left a finished blueprint. And unlike Riese, another underground project actually reached production. Near St. Georgen and der Gusen in Austria lies another underground landscape. But this one was not just abandoned concrete. This one became a factory. Bergkristall was built in 1944 and 1945 by prisoners of Gusen II, part of the Mauthausen-Gusen camp system. The complex stretched across more than 50,000 square meters with roughly 8.5 kilometers of tunnels. Thousands of prisoners were forced to create an underground industrial complex in barely a year. That is the first disturbing fact. The second is that its history became partially buried after the war, not under rubble but beneath neglect, private ownership, limited access, and later sensational claims. Historians believe the complex was heavily connected to Messerschmitt aircraft manufacture and late-war jet production. More sensational claims involving hidden atomic research remain controversial and unsupported by core evidence. This is what makes Bergkristall so compelling. The verified history is already horrifying enough. It was not a myth, it was not a rumor. It was an underground factory system built by enslaved prisoners as Nazi Germany tried to move war production beneath the ground. But because access and documentation remained incomplete, the public often remembers the myths more clearly than the evidence. What else disappeared inside that gap between documented history and post-war silence? And the same late-war logic would produce one of the largest bunkers Germany ever built. By 1945, Germany was losing the war. Allied bombing had shattered exposed industrial sites. The answer, again, was concrete. More concrete, bigger concrete. Concrete so massive it still dominates the landscape near Bremen today. This is Bunker Valentin. Built from 1943 to 1945, it was designed as a giant submarine production bunker. Thousands of forced laborers from across Europe were used in its construction. Mortality was severe, and despite the scale, the bunker never fulfilled the production role imagined for it. Historians generally interpret Valentin as an attempt to harden submarine production against Allied air attacks. claims of hidden secret projects remain far weaker than the straightforward armaments explanation. Its mystery lies in contradiction. By the time it neared completion, Germany was still pouring labor, concrete, and lives into a submarine factory that would never truly operate. It was technology, desperation, and forced labor fused into one gigantic ruin. And after the war, another fortified site would be dealt with in an even more dramatic way. On April 18, 1947, the British packed a fortified North Sea island with explosives. Not a bunker, not a tunnel, an island. Heligoland had been one of Nazi Germany's fortified strongholds. After the war, British authorities loaded its military structures with roughly 6,700 tons of explosives. The operation became known as Operation Big Bang. The blast was one of the largest planned non-nuclear detonations of its era. The island survived, but its landscape changed permanently. Was this simply demolition, or was it an attempt to erase the military power of an island fortress forever? The British packed an island with thousands of tons of explosives and still failed to erase it. But in Austria, the Nazis chose water instead of fire. Divers descend into the cold waters of Lake Toplitz. They are not searching for a shipwreck. They are searching for paper, money, evidence. Lake Toplitz is tied to Operation Bernhard, Nazi Germany's sophisticated wartime counterfeiting scheme targeting British currency. When the war collapsed, equipment, notes, and related material were sunk in Austrian lakes. Later expeditions recovered counterfeit banknotes and even a surviving printing plate. Historians know the operation was real. Prisoners at Sachsenhausen produced near-perfect forged currency. But not every missing tool, document, or deposit tied to the operation's final days has been accounted for. A counterfeit operation so good that decades later, investigators were still pulling pieces of it from an alpine lake. And from forged money, the trail turns to something far more dangerous: uranium. In the final months of the war, German nuclear researchers assembled an unusual experimental reactor at Heligoland. Not a bomb, not a power station. A suspended geometry of uranium cubes and heavy water. The reactor never achieved criticality. The German wartime nuclear effort never produced an imminent bomb. And yet only a small number of those uranium cubes can now be confidently traced. Where did the rest go? How many survive? How many sit unidentified in collections or laboratories? The reactor failed, but the uranium did not disappear. It scattered into history. And another wartime legend survived precisely because its evidence never solidified. In 2015, two searchers claimed they had found evidence of a buried Nazi train near Wałbrzych in Poland. The story spread instantly. A hidden train, Nazi treasure, secret tunnels beneath the mountains. It had everything. But later geophysical studies failed to support the existence of a buried train at the proposed site. The mystery here is not whether the train exists. It is why some stories survive even when evidence weakens. World War II left behind real secrets, but it also left behind empty spaces where legends could grow. And from a legend with no confirmed train, we move to a site where the evidence is horrifyingly real. By the time Soviet forces advanced into Manchuria, parts of Unit 731 had already been destroyed. Buildings were damaged, records were dispersed, evidence was erased. And the people responsible became valuable to another power. Unit 731 conducted biological warfare research and human experimentation. Evidence was destroyed as Soviet forces advanced. Post-war intelligence interests complicated accountability. Historians do not debate whether Unit 731 existed. They ask how much is still missing, how many records were burned, how many victims were never documented, how much disappeared before history could fully record it. And on the other side of the Pacific, two machines survived almost by accident. The largest submarines of the war were not destroyed in battle. They were captured, studied, and then deliberately sunk. The Japanese I-400 class submarines carried aircraft inside watertight hangars and were designed for long-range surprise attacks. After the war, the United States scuttled surviving examples near Hawaii. Decades later, researchers rediscovered them beneath the Pacific. These submarines became underwater time capsules, machines from a fallen empire hidden beneath the sea, and one German aircraft survived above ground, raising a different question. Not where was it hidden, but what was it meant to become? The aircraft looks wrong for 1945. Too smooth, too modern, too much like something from another era. The Horten Ho 229V3 is the only surviving airframe of Germany's radical all-wing jet design. Captured in 1945 and preserved today by the Smithsonian, it continues to fascinate historians. Some later claimed it was an early stealth aircraft, but surviving documentation for deliberate wartime stealth design remains far thinner than popular myths suggest. Was it simply desperate late-war engineering? Or an early glimpse of ideas that later shaped aviation? Sometimes the strangest wartime discovery is not what was buried, it is what survived. Across Europe and Asia, World War II left more than ruins. It left unfinished tunnels, factory cities beneath mountains, counterfeit money beneath lakes, uranium scattered through history, and machines hidden beneath the sea. Some mysteries survive because records were destroyed. Others survive because evidence is incomplete. And some survive because the public story became larger than the facts. The danger is not that every mystery hides a conspiracy. The danger is that war creates places where truth can be buried, burned, sunk, scattered, or forgotten. Perhaps the greatest mysteries of World War II are not the battles we remember, but the secrets still buried beneath the ground.